Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann, and it's just me in my kitchen. And let's talk about the Supreme Court doing something that I find to be a very, very wise decision.
You don't say.
What did they do? Oh, well, I'll tell you. They upheld the ban on transgender athletes, like transgender females participating in women's and girls' school sports. In their 6-3 decision, they upheld that these bans do in fact not, in their opinion, violate Title IX rules. They also stated that the bans do not violate the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. And if you don't know what that means, the Equal Protection Clause is a cornerstone of the American Civil Rights Movement. It was found in Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, and requires that states to treat similarly situated individuals in the same manner. However, this has become an issue of great debate because to honor the trans athletes, of which there are very few, honestly, would be to then give them the opportunity to basically cheat the system by, quote, switching gender identities to compete against females. And as somebody that has daughters and has friends with kids who compete in sports at both the high school and collegiate level, primarily daughters, by the way, and those girls had to bust their asses to get to where they were. And what they didn't need is some boy who's not doing a good enough job at competing against the boys deciding, well, I'm a girl now and I'm going to go compete against the girls. The thing about this is, I want you to think about how unfair it is to bust your ass, to train, to practice, to compete for years, and then out of nowhere, somebody shows up. It was a boy, now they identify as a girl, and then they totally snatch your dream away from you when beating you for the state championship. Oh, has that ever happened? Yes, it has. Tim Walz will get on TV and talk about girls' bowling teams and other shit like that, glaringly ignoring the fact that the Champlain Park girls' softball team had a transgender pitcher, Marissa Rothenberger, who led Champlain Park High School to the Class Quadruple A softball state championship. How did they do that? Well, her dominance came from pitching multiple consecutive games and maintaining a stellar ERA. And there was a lot of pushback because so many strikeouts. What a great performance. And if it would have been a girl that did this, it would have been incredible. But also, the rule states that there's nothing to stop a pitcher from competing as the starter in consecutive contests, which I think is kind of bullshit in and of itself. But imagine the upper body strength that a transgender female is going to have. Even if this kid started taking hormones, you're not going to lose that strength. You're not going to lose that difference in musculature and bone structure. Men have wider shoulders. And frankly, if you watch girls softball, a lot of them pitch underhand. And you watch boys baseball, and they whale that motherfucking ball. And it got a lot of attention, negative, against that player. And I would say it's warranted because if I was a parent of a girl on all those other teams in the playoffs, they got beat by this pitcher who, by any measure of fairness, should not have been there. I don't care about what feels good or trying to push your social justice, gender politic agenda. It's a matter of fairness. And those girls, they worked hard all season. And then they basically got screwed in the end. That's the most glaring example around here. We all know about Leah Thomas, the collegiate swimmer, who was not very good as a man and then decided to be a girl and compete against girls and was doing way fucking better. One of the top in the nation. What does that fucking tell you? Just like Dave Chappelle's joke about if LeBron James decided to compete in the WNBA, where he'd score 478 points a game. Yeah, because he's taller and he's faster and he's stronger and he can dunk the ball, which most of them can't. And he can muscle them out in the paint on defense because of his greatly more developed musculature. All the people that are pro-trans rights, they want to sit here and talk about, well, this is a marginalized population and you need to think of them. Well, I am thinking of them. And while I'm thinking of them, I just want to point out that we have the regular Olympics for your standard able-bodied individuals. Yeah? And we have the Paralympics for people that are amputees or are handicapped, okay? And then we have the Special Olympics, which is for people that are mentally disabled and love Capri Suns and John Cena. So why is it that we have to keep trying to shoehorn all these transgender females into women's sports? Because let's be honest, I don't hear about any transgender males competing against males. Why? Because they're going to get their ass kicked in like every sport, especially wrestling, especially boxing. Can you imagine if there was a chick that's like, no, I'm a guy now, and then they wanted to compete in mixed martial arts, how badly they'd get the shit beat out of them or choked out or fucking slammed around the octagon? Why? Because they are smaller in stature and they don't have the same amount of physical strength. Whereas conversely, if John Jones decided that he wanted to be a girl now, air quotes, and wear dresses and compete against females, he would knock those bitches silly 6 ways from Sunday. They wouldn't have a fucking chance. If he wasn't knocking them out cold, he'd be kicking their head clean off their fucking neck or choking them out so bad that they need to be brought back to life with a fucking AED right there in the middle of the crowd. So when you sit here and you want to talk about the fairness of all this, you have to focus on the fact that it's primarily, almost exclusively, affecting women's and girls' sports. That's what's happening. South Park lampooned it with, the Randy Savage-looking chick competing against women at, I believe it was the CrossFit Games and smashing all the records. I mean, that's what would happen. So when you let these males compete as females, they're taller, they're faster, they're stronger. There's only a few sports that wouldn't matter, like skeet shooting and maybe archery. But swimming and golf, wrestling, football, baseball or softball, basketball, volleyball, lacrosse, all of those sports, if they have both genders playing at a school, any male, for the most part, that switches to playing as a female is going to do considerably better in that. And it's going to take opportunity away for both competition and in the long run, wins from female athletes. And I don't appreciate that. I don't think that women fought as hard as they did to be taken seriously, to get their own professional sports leagues like the WNBA or the PWHL, the Women's Hockey League, or women's professional soccer. Do you know how fucking hard they had to fight to convince people that there was interest in that? And then you want to just sit there and tuck your john and wear a sports bra and trim your hair short and go out there and be the best of the best without having to put all the years worth of effort in there? That's bullshit. And if that argument is not enough to convince you, then I'd like to point out that a 15-year-old student sued the Biden administration after a trans teammate allegedly made rape threats to them. Have you not heard about this? Bridgeport, West Virginia. 15-year-old student in West Virginia sued the Biden administration after a transgender teammate made threatening comments to them and exposed himself to her. And these threats included talk of rape and forcible penetration or making her suck her dick. As dumb as that sounds. The student's identified only as AC because it's a minor, competes in track and field for the Harrison County School District. And they had a transgender female on the team. Now, it's bad enough you're taking away opportunities, but here's where the whole thing got crazy out of hand. This female student, AC, was in middle school and involved a biologically male student who identified as a girl, labeled BPJ in the lawsuit, and they were competing against each other in shot put. And AC was initially stronger than BPJ in both shot put and discus events. And then the transgender student eventually surpassed her. So when the transgender student beat her in those events, there were offensive comments made in the locker room, including, "You have more testosterone than I do, and I'm still beating you." Now that seems stupid because there's no way that transgender student has less testosterone than the girl. But anyways, in 8th grade, the comments turned more aggressive and violent and disturbing. So in addition to chiding them about being weaker and losing, during the end of the year, about 2 or 3 times per week, BPJ would look at me and say, "Suck my dick." Well, that's a weird thing for a girl to say to another girl, right? Because it's a transgender girl, not a real girl. In the lawsuit, there were usually other girls around who heard it. And at times, BPJ quietly told AC, "I'm going to stick my dick in your pussy." Sometimes added, "in your ass as well." Well, isn't that great? So these comments made this girl really uncomfortable. And then they'd go to events on overnight trips to compete, and they'd be forced to share a hotel room, some of the girls, with this transgender student. And I don't know how the hell you get away with that, because It just seems like you're gaming the system so you can hang out with girls or be close to girls. And I got to say this. If at any time my daughters were competing in a school sport and they were in a locker room with a transgender student, we already have to get past the hurdle of whether or not they're changing in front of my girls and they're showing their penis. Peekaboo! That's not okay. There need to be separate change facilities for the transgender athletes. Like stalls. They all should have their own stall so nobody's communally in the locker room standing around whipping their dick out and be like, what, you don't like my virgina? No, we don't like your virgina or your balls, BPJ. Oh, so what, you think I'm just in here to ogle tits? As they take a long, way too long and very uncomfortable stare around the room and soak in all the free titties and asses and possibly vaginas they get to see. That makes me uncomfortable. But then imagine it goes a step further and then that transgender student starts threatening to rape one of my daughters. I'm going to have a hard time not going to that school and committing a hate crime. Don't get me started on how much I'm going to yell at the principal, but I'm going to want to threaten that fucking kid and say, if you make one more comment like that to my kids, I will make sure that you end up in juvie, and you won't have to worry about how you place in the next event. You'll have to worry about how all the other boys that they're going to house you with, or maybe they'll put you with girls, or maybe you'll be in seg. But the situation there is that somebody's going to do something to you. Either beat you, molest you, or you're going to sit there all by your lonesome in a single room, ostracized and segregated from everybody, and regretting that you made those shitty, dirty, fucking rapey comments. So now let's play devil's advocate here. You want to be supportive, you want to be inclusive, you want to make these transgender athletes feel like they're athletes like everyone else. You want to treat them like human beings. Well, unfortunately, to do that, you have to go back to the beginning of the episode here, and you have to have them compete against people that they are biologically stronger and faster than. You have to have them be in a locker room changing with people that shouldn't be around a penis. Like if a boy just walks into a girl's locker room and sneaks a peek, that's a sex crime. But if they put on lipstick and a shitty wig or grow their hair out, somehow that's okay? What fucking sense does that make? And you want to let them compete, but why do we not just have open categories for transgender individuals? Oh, why? Because that'll make you feel like you stand out? Well, you already fucking stand out. But I refuse to believe that the small handful and minute percentage of transgender athletes, as the loony left like to portray it as, to say, it's not even that many, you're making it seem like it's an epidemic. Well, what we're trying to do is nip it in the bud before it becomes an epidemic, you fucking dumb shit. So we're trying to stop it before it gets too bad, and to do that, you got to hold them accountable for all the feelings of discomfort that they cause, or the feelings of negative emotions that all these girls that compete against them feel. And yeah, if you tell a transgender athlete you can't compete against girls if you're a transgender girl, I'm sure it's going to make them feel horrible. But again, majority rules. Your delusions of what your gender is or are, or you believe it to be, that's your cross to bear. It's not society's. So stop trying to fucking shoehorn in your I, me. We used to cater to what was best and what was fair, not what made everybody feel good in their white knighting and their virtue signaling. Why are we getting away from majority rules? Majority rules, for the most part, makes it so that the most people have rules that are fair and equitable to them, as opposed to, well, you got this one girl that, was born a boy, but now they want to play softball with everybody, and man, can they throw a fucking fast pitch. Well, good for them, but also, what, we're just going to let them take over? Fuck that. And you can make the comparison like, well, look what happened with the NBA and baseball when they let black people in. Well, here's the thing. They were the same gender. They had roughly the same musculature. Now, the black guys were taller, and some of them jumped higher and ran faster, and I'm sure Bob Cousy thought he was the shit until he saw one of their dicks in the locker room.
God damn it.
But yeah, they took over the league. And that's okay. I'm fine with that because it's men versus men. But when I see Brittany Griner and I hear that voice and I see the video of them shooting hoops outside the pool and they have their shirt off and they have no tits and a very pronounced Adam's apple, I don't feel like this is just a case of, well, you're kind of tall and you have a condition that it affects your vocal cords. What I want to say is, you should probably have to go somewhere and prove to somebody that you don't have a dick. Yeah? Prove that you don't have a dick? Let's not even leave it up to the testosterone levels or the genome tests. Do you have a dick? You go and get a sports physical, a doctor will check you. They're either going to check your testicles for a hernia or they're going to check your vagina. And whichever one you have dictates which gender sports team you can play on. I guess what I'm saying, if you haven't picked up on it, is I don't care about trans athletes' feelings more than I care about fairness and safety in women's sports. Because all it takes is one transgender female one time to do something to a teammate, and next thing you know, everybody's going to panic. But if we don't let them in the locker room, we don't have them on the team, well, then they can't rape anybody in the locker room. I mean, they can still go and rape somebody, but it's not going to be the same thing as if they were allowed to be in that locker room by a very liberal school administrative staff, and then calamity ensued when they're standing there like Ric Flair fucking helicoptering their dick, laughing about it like the plane ride from hell episode of Dark Side of the Ring we've all watched or heard about. I don't want girls to have to see dicks they don't want to, and that's more important than fucking transgender athletes' feelings. Sorry, not sorry. And you can call me a transphobe all you want, but that's not what I am. What I am is an ally to female athletes that want them to have the right amount of competition and absolute fairness at every level. I care about their comfort. I care about their safety. As a father to daughters, like I said, I got friends whose daughters compete. They deserve to be on the field with the same gender and the opportunity to win just as much as everybody else without anybody having a weird physical competitive advantage because they were born a boy. Transgender female athletes with their delusions of gender identity do not have preference over biologically born females in female sports as it stands right now, and I'm fine with that. And although Tampon Timmy, our governor of Minnesota, thinks that we're being rude to all the girls, that they're being unfair and that we're being cruel, well, we're not. We're trying to keep our daughters safe, Tim. It's too bad that you also don't believe in doing that. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann. And that's the end.